Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, Juggernaut issue number 1. This was a really good book. Had a couple problems with the author of the book, but it is what it is. We're going to move on from that, and I can separate a person's attitude with the person's work. So I'm doing that with this one. Anyway, guys, let's get talking about who made the comic book, talk a little bit more about the book itself. So this issue is called Picking Up the Pieces. Fabian, however the hell you pronounce his last name, is the writer. Ron Garney on art. Matt Mila doing the colors, and VC's Joe Sabina doing the letters. The Juggernaut character was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and if you flip all the way to the back of the book, you find that George Shaw and Matt Mila are the cover artists. There are 3 variant cover artists. I don't usually get into those, especially not when there's multiple. Anyway, this was a fun book. First, I'm going to talk about the art. Holy crap. You want a good artist, you could do worse with Ron Garney. If you just look at his characters and the shading of the characters and everything that happens with the characters, even if it's in a silhouette, you're going to say, this guy's a really good artist. This guy's really good at what he does. It's when you look at the backgrounds that you realize the genius behind this guy. When he puts a pencil in hand or an ink brush in hand, or he's just doing it on a computer, I don't know, I don't care. However the hell this guy does it, holy crap, it's freaking amazing. If you're going to have a story-driven art, or excuse me, a story-driven story, and you need an artist who can accommodate that kind of a style, you could do a lot worse than Ron Garney. He's definitely one of the top 5, maybe the top 3 artists I can think of who would actually be able to do that. Bang. You look at this, you look at Juggernaut walking through limbo, dragging his armor behind him. Meanwhile, he looks emaciated and he's just, skinny and old looking and ragged. Wow. Wow, I was believing that he was really there. I'm like, how's he gonna get out? I felt so bad for Kane Marco. Dude, Garney, one of the best freaking artists out there. Give praise to this man. He freaking deserves it. Boom. When you've got Fabian putting together this story, he's had a lot of time off. So he's had a lot of time to think about this story. 5 issues. They said, hey, they're the solicits. Hey, Juggernaut's not a mutant, but he's always been associated with mutants. So what happens when he gets to go to Krakoa? I'm actually curious, especially since his best and pretty much only friend, Black Tom Cassidy's there, and he's a little loco en la cabeza. I'm imagining that's going to be kind of fun, but we're not there yet. Instead, we got Juggernaut working for damage control. He has brand new armor. You're going to read the story and you're going to understand why he has new armor. It's actually good. I like it. The design is good. All of it. It seems to be like an automatic flip back thing for the helmet. So it looks very similar, although it is in fact different. I don't know what benefits it helps him out with. It's clearly not magical. If it was created, I imagine, by damage control. I think they said that at one point in here. Yeah, so I don't think it'll be protecting him from psionics very much. That's a damn shame. Also probably won't be protecting from magic too much. That was his one weakness that would get through his force field all the time. And his armor was the only thing that protected him in any way, shape, or form from it. So we'll see. I don't know. Giving Juggernaut a weakness or two probably wouldn't be a bad thing. Juggernaut is handled very well in here. It was just the Venom issue this week that I also reviewed, Donny Cates, where Juggernaut was kind of in that comic book, and I mentioned he was handled well in the book. There's a reason why he could be punked out in the book, but he still wasn't punked out. And that's important because, Marvel always has this thing. When you have a character, when you get the chance to write for a character for Marvel or DC, you take the character off of the shelf and you get to play in the sandbox with them. The trick is when you're finished with your arc, your run, whatever, you have to put the character back the way that you found him. If you don't, well, no, you just do. You have to do that, right? Rosenberg, who did the most recent Uncanny X-Men run, he had the opportunity to be told, you can leave that toy wherever you want. You can flush it down the toilet for all we care. It's fine. The Hickman verse is coming up next. Hoxpox, baby. So do whatever you want. And oh, he did. I know there's a lot of people who didn't like it, and they said that there were no consequences for it. I'm going to politely disagree. I liked Rosenberg's run. I did love the idea that he knew that he could do whatever he wants with it because, for the most part, it doesn't matter because it will be fixed. But some of those things, we didn't know how they were going to be fixed, and they did matter. One of those, there's several evidences for that. One of them is actually in this book. When magic did what she did to him, and there was an editor's note in here also that led to that. I love the editor's notes, dude. You all know that. You give me just a single editor's note in here, it shows me that you actually care just a little bit about what you're writing or what you're editing. It depends on who's actually putting in the editor's note. Anyway, the reference there, it was actually good because we got to see how this happens and in general what happens. Now, this whole book, this whole issue could have been how he got from there and where he got to here and how he met up with damage control because he's working with damage control now. But we didn't get into all of that, only some of it. That's cool. And the way that it was done was actually handled expertly. I love the way it was handled in this book. Now, Juggernaut working for damage control seems really perfect, right? There's one part where he says, hey, I'll knock down the rest of this city block for you, no extra charge. Yeah, I'm going to tap into my business background and I'm going to point out, bro, don't. If you're good at something, this is free advice. If you're good at something, never do it for free. So, and like, what else is this guy good at? Not too much else. Not too much else. Can he even math? You know, how many maths does he know? So, when you see him trying to handle this character who he thinks is a mutant, I don't know how he would have handled the character if he knew that it wasn't actually a mutant. That's like the closest you're going to get to a spoiler for me in this comic book. It's not actually a mutant, but she says it immediately, multiple times. He just doesn't believe her until we get whatever bit of an origin story we're going to get from her in this first issue. I dig the way it was done again. I wonder how he would have treated her if he didn't think that she was a mutant on the spot. There's a reason why he continues treating her good, even when he finds out that she's not a mutant. And you'll read that, when you get the comic book. And you should definitely be getting this comic book. My peeps, this was really fun. There is one character who he's never beaten. Or, excuse me, there's one character who's never beaten him before. It used to be that Thor was one of those characters. Not quite so anymore after Jason Aaron's most recent exploit into the stories, but Hulk has never actually beaten Juggernaut. Yeah, when the freaking magical hammer fell out of the sky and Hulk grabbed it, he was that runic Futhark dude. That was completely different. That didn't count. But Hulk himself has never actually beaten the Juggernaut before. And that's important to state, because when he has to fight Juggernaut in the next issue, I'm hoping it's going to be done really well. Again, treat characters good, even if they're not the main character. I talked about the main character. You got to put him back on the shelf when everything's done, right? Unfortunately, Marvel doesn't care nowadays so much about backup characters and especially villains. Especially even if it's a main villain, they really just don't care about that. Back in the Shooter days, I know there's some people who don't like Jim Shooter. Too bad. Somebody's personal attitude sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the writing themselves. Again, I'm saying really nice things about Fabian Nicieza, however the hell you pronounce his freaking last name. For the sake of conversation, let me just get this out of the way for anybody who's not familiar with this. Domino Annual #1. I don't remember if it was, I don't think Domino Hot Shots had an annual. So it was regular Domino Annual. Gail Simone was the writer on the book, on that title. So when the annual came out, she did one of the stories. I really liked her story, but I was sick. I mentioned it all throughout that week that I was sick. I just didn't want to get to the point of redundancy with every single issue or review that I did that, hey, I'm sick, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I guess if you only looked at that one review that I've ever done in my life, then, that you've never looked at any of my other reviews, then you'd probably think, this guy's just a jerk. No, I was sick. But anyway, so I just wasn't thinking as well as I possibly could. I could have tried to pronounce his name better. I think I said Nicieza or something like that. Anyway, it's still just a name. It's just a name. So, and it's written. It's not like somebody said it and I mispronounced it. I mean, geez, I'm fluent in multiple languages. I've got the linguistics down. If you say the name, I can usually remember it and repronounce it, and I give it right back to you. But it's a written thing, and I just whatever. I was sick. That's my excuse. But when you, when you're curious, what do people think about the book that I wrote, and you want to check somebody's review? Cool, more power to you. But if you're going to get offended by somebody saying your name wrong, I mean, I didn't attack the book. I didn't attack the writer. That's not who I am. I don't attack people. You know what I'm saying? I'm 45 years old. I'm going to be kind of mature about the books that I'm reading, When this freaking guy goes and says something like, okay, maybe you should go and do some schoolwork, professor, he puts it in quotation marks. Yeah, I earned the title professor by teaching at university English as a foreign language at university on 3 continents. I am probably more of a professor than Fabian, whatever the hell his last name is a writer. You see how insulting that is? That's just so disrespectful. But I was actually assigned the title professor. He just writes and he gets a paycheck for it. That's not the same. That's not the same. I don't know what college degree he got to be called a writer. Anybody can write. Not anybody can be called a professor. So what happens when you try and talk shit to somebody who's just simply a lot smarter than you? Anyway, so that was, whatever. In my personal opinion, I know there's a lot of people who said they met him and he was a cool person. In my opinion, he was a dick to me. And when you act like a dick, you walk like a dick, you talk like a dick, you're a dick. So, hey, men, real men, can actually give apologies, or at least have a conversation. But whatever, man. It is what it is. Anyway, that's where that story comes from. So I know a lot of people don't like Jim Shooter, but for the love of God, would Jim Shooter have let Misty Knight, who can, with her right arm, her bionic right arm, bench press, lift a ton with that arm, be able to just one-shot the Rhino? And then later on, we're supposed to believe that Spider-Man, who can lift on average 20 tons, but even on a weekday, 10 tons, that he's going to have a hard time fighting the Rhino when it's only the Rhino he's trying to fight, or Miles Morales, who's technically more powerful than Spider-Man, and he's going to have a hard time fighting the Rhino. Yeah, that's just weird to me, right? But the Rhino and Taskmaster and Sabretooth and the Juggernaut are just some characters that are typically punked out. So when a writer comes a writer, I'm going to be a little bit salty about that, all right? I'll have a banana later, so the potassium kind of counteracts that sodium. Anyway, when a writer comes along later and wants to write the Juggernaut as a main character, I can't help but sit back and it was addressed in this comic book also, which I think was a great idea. Yeah, you got stuck for a whole day in concrete. That was fighting Spider-Man. It would have been nice to see an editor's note for that, but maybe he doesn't want to draw attention to that comic. It was a good comic, but the way that he was defeated was a little, but, whatever. It was everything that happened after that got a little out of control. You could argue that a disintegrator ray from freaking Nimrod. I'm thinking biblical. There we go. So when Nimrod does a disintegrator ray that's supposed to evaporate anybody, and Juggernaut just gets knocked out from that, I guess you can argue that was pretty good. But when every comic book that he appears after that is just him getting punked out by somebody. The last good comic book he was in my opinion, was Thor comic book. Who was the writer? Actually, I think it was 2 writers after Simonson got off the book. Back when they first introduced the New Warriors. When Juggernaut was facing off against the New Warriors in Thor, that was awesome. You know what I'm saying? It was like he actually had to be sent to another dimension because his unfettered might didn't work, for crying out loud. That's awesome. That's building up a bad guy, so the next time that hero or any other hero or team has to fight the Juggernaut, it's like, yo, that's awesome. But it's lazy AF to just say, I need my hero to look cool, so I'm going to have this hero, who's clearly not in the same weight class. I'm going to use Luke Cage as an example. Luke Cage is one of my favorite characters. I love that character, dude. But he's not in the same weight class as freaking Juggernaut. And when Thunderbolt shows up and he's like, I got to put this guy in place, so, boop. And then, all of a sudden he starts listening to you. you didn't build that hero up. As much as you built Luke Cage up, that's also the same amount of space that you brought Juggernaut down. So think about that next time. And if we had somebody like Shooter, as much as people may say, you know, I hated working for Shooter, or he was terrible, sucks to be you. You know what I'm saying? Because the guy he made sure that everybody put out incredible comic books, where something like that wouldn't have happened to Juggernaut or Taskmaster or whatever. You know what I'm saying? The characters would have been treated a whole lot better. And that's kind of important, I'm saying. Anyway, guys, that's going to be about it for me. This was a really good book. For everybody who was really excited for this book, and me, I don't like to get excited for a book because I know that it could wind up just sucking. Who knows? Definitely consider grabbing this book. Also, heads up, I've mentioned this is more likely to be a speculator's book than a flipper's book. So if you want to get the book because, you know, first new appearance of his new costume and all that stuff, by all means, go out and grab it. Excuse me, do not spend too much money on this comic book, dude. The book should be around. Even then, if you're only here for the story, I'm pretty certain. I'm familiar enough with Marvel's style. This comic book, I can almost guarantee it'll go to a second print. It might even go to a third print. That's how good the story was in here. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of stories. All that being said, that's going to be it for me. Guys, you know, consider watching an ad and like the video, and I'm out. Talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.